Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery, where we talk about all kinds of recovery needs, right? There's, of course, the traditional, the space where everybody's head goes to for those folks that are struggling, that are down the out, not functioning in their daily lives, that really, could use some help removing chemical substances from their life. But then there are so many other journeys that we have to take. And today's topic is really special to me because I recently have had to, take this walk. And so I'm really excited to welcome my guest today and invite you to experience her as well. Jenny Dilts is a grief coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a grief coach. I always want to stick the word recovery in there. She's a grief coach who really specializes in accompanying people on their journey to convert their grief into a space of growth. But she does it in a way that really matches where each client is, and to do it in their own way, in the way that's going to serve them. And she does it without judgment, without expectation, and just the removal of despair is just amazing. So, I don't want to, continue to try explaining exactly how you take people on this magical journey, Jenny, but again, grief is a big thing, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
broad. It's not just when we lose a person. It could be a lot of things. So anyway, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people, one, how did you come to feel called into this space?
Sure. So, like Tricia said, my name is Jenny Dilts and I'm a grief coach. I started really working in the grief space about 6 years ago when I volunteered to give a meal to a family whose husband and dad died suddenly. Unlike most of people who work in the field of grief, I don't come with quote personal experience with grief. My introduction to grief was when I dropped this meal off to the family. So I delivered this meal to this family. I thought it was going to be a 5-minute visit. It turned into a 3-hour life-changing experience for me.
Really?
And this is really where I found my calling, both as like a life mission calling, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, as well as an internal calling of passion and excitement, even to support people in their grief.
I don't mean to interrupt but I'm so extremely fascinated and intrigued about, what that first meeting looked like. Like 3 hours with people you didn't know. Like what happened inside of that?
So, like I said, I was expecting a 5-minute meal drop off. I had all 5 of my kids with me. We were gonna just drop off the meal and go to the park. Well, mom invited us in and I sat down on their couch and she started talking. And I listened. I listened like everything depended on that. Because probably it did. It did for me. Often she apologized for recounting the details of trying to save her husband. She apologized for the graphicness of what she was sharing. None of that bothered me. I wasn't like fazed by her tears. I wasn't fazed by the grief, the trauma. I was there. I was there focused on her and her experience.
How amazing.
It was incredible.
Because I know that, we're often at a loss for words. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to be. And we know that there isn't anything we can do really
Mhm.
that can change the situation. And I think
Right.
as beings, most beings, right, want to help fix things.
Mhm.
So how interesting that you were able to be so connected.
That's part of that is my default nature. I'm a listener. I observe things. I'm not usually one to initiate the conversation, but I can listen. I can be present. That's one of my superpowers. And that's what I discovered that day, is that I have a calming presence and people feel safe opening up with their deepest pain, their greatest vulnerability, their hardest and most painful grief.
Wow. Wow. So you have this encounter and this experience. I would imagine that physically, emotionally, spiritually, you felt something quite extraordinary as well.
Yes, it started to unlock this passion, this gift, this awareness of supporting people in this grief space. But I didn't, and it was also a gradual awakening for me. I went back to my therapist because I was meeting with my therapist weekly at the time. Went back to my therapist and just told him about my experience. And he stops me and he says, "Have you ever considered becoming a therapist?"
Wow.
No, thanks, bye. Um, like I said, I had 5 kids. I still have 5 kids. My youngest was about a year old.
Wow.
And so I didn't think logistically it would be wise for me to go pursue a master's degree. So I thought, no, no thanks. Maybe later when all the kids are grown more, then maybe I can. But his question planted another seed of maybe there's something to this. Let's see where it goes. So I started telling people that I help others with death, dying, grief. And even that was hard for me to do because nobody wants to talk about death. Nobody wants to talk about grief. And so when I would start to introduce that and tell people what I do, I would get the, oh no, she has a disease type reaction because our society doesn't do very well in these subjects. But I kept going. And the more that I told people what I do, the more that I embraced this grief work, the more opportunities, the more stories were coming to me. And so I kept going with it. I got to go to a training with Zen Caregiving Project in San Francisco. And that was amazing. I learned about death and loss and also about what those things mean in my life. And one of the greatest lessons that I learned in that training through my personal experience was that when there's a loss, it opens the way for something even more valuable, greater for us to have. So that was a powerful lesson to me, that loss can be like when one door opens, when one door closes, another door opens. So loss can be, even though that door closes, it opens the door to something but greater. And that's what I found in my experience.
So that's where that growth piece comes in?
That's where it started, yeah. And then I was able to find a coaching training program called Coaching at End of Life. And through that, I got certified as an end of life coach, which includes death and dying and those processes, grief coach, and the training to become credentialed with ICF, the International Coaching Federation, as a life coach. So through that 10-month training, now I have death and dying coaching, grief coaching, and life coaching. And that's when I really started to embrace my role as a coach.
Sure. I like the combination, right? Because you get to, I would imagine, engage with the unit, and maybe not every time, but engage with the family unit, the person that's passing, and the family unit that's going to be there after, right, for their grieving, and almost get to start working sooner to decrease the severity, or that's maybe not the right word, but to decrease the impact of the passing.
Yeah. And it gave me a better understanding for the dying process as well.